Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Heart of Hospice podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
This episode is being sponsored by Halo Care. Whether you're supporting an aging parent or planning for your own independence, Halo Care empowers you to live confidently at home. From personal care and home safety to meaningful social connection, Halo Care gives you peace of mind knowing someone's always there. Learn more at halocaregroup.com/USA or check the show notes for the link. Halo Care, where technology meets compassion and home feels like home. This episode is sponsored by Hospice Navigation Services. When you need information about hospice, Hospice Navigation Services is here to help. An expert navigator will answer your questions about end-of-life care and give you the tools to feel confident in your decisions. A hospice navigation session is a great way to troubleshoot your current hospice care. It's your journey. We can be your guide. Visit hospicenavigation.com to schedule your hospice navigation session today.
Today's guest, author Tracy Heath, is taking a holistic approach to serious illness and dying, finding a healthy balance of emotional, physical, and financial well-being. Tracy Heath is the author of Before Goodbye, your emotional, physical, and financial guide when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness. With over 3 decades of expertise in estate and generational wealth planning, she's considered an expert in the investment industry. One of Tracy's best gifts lies in her ability to light the path for those who are grappling with the multifaceted challenges of a loved one's serious illness. She believes in a holistic approach to life's most challenging moments. Her own journey has been sculpted by profound personal loss, losing both of her parents when Tracy was in her 20s, 3 siblings-in-law to ALS, and her own brother to cancer when he was just 47. Those experiences have uniquely equipped Tracy to navigate the waters of serious illness with grace and insight. She brings a really deep understanding to the intricate interplay between emotional, physical, and financial well-being to her work. Tracy and I talked about her parents' deaths and the effects they had on her life and her work. As a financial professional, she's got a different perspective on financial planning. She believes in planning for tomorrow while still enjoying today. She views her work as a holistic financial planner because of her multifaceted background and her training. After struggling with the idea of writing a book, Tracy says she ended up writing the book that she could have used when she was younger, when her parents were sick and died. Tracy believes that everyone should choose an appointment partner. This was one of my favorite things out of her book. and a partner who would attend medical appointments with the person, and she offers advice on how to choose that person. You can connect with Tracy at tracymheath.com. So stay with me for a great conversation. There's a lot to learn. Tracy, welcome to the Heart of Hospice podcast. It's great to have you with me.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think we're gonna have a good interview today. So
Excellent.
I want to start off with one of my favorite things. It's the end of life deck, which is a small deck of cards, if you're familiar with it. I know my listeners are because I use this all the time. And it's a great conversation starter. The end of life deck is one that end of life workers and hospice workers can use to start conversations about death and dying and advanced care planning. So I know a lot of this is right up your alley, and I actually picked one that I think is good for you. So here is your question. Growing up, my family dealt with death, A, by talking openly, sharing feelings, stories, and dark humor, or B, in a no-nonsense sort of way, shit happens, move on. It's my first curse word of the interview, sorry. And then C, keeping it all bottled up and avoiding any discussion.
That would be C.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, I chose this one because I figured with your work that you would absolutely have just talked it all over the place.
No, as a family growing up, not at all. Death of pets, I didn't see a lot of death. Traveled a lot, met lots of different people, lots of experiences, not immediate with death, but any subject we just didn't talk about anything serious.
Interesting.
But I think that really led to what I do now and why it's so important for me to make sure others are actually open and talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And anything of importance.
I can see that. So your personal experience with caregiving and with loss has really sort of led you to the work that you're doing today. Tell me about your experience with your parents. You lost your parents when you were pretty young, in your 20s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so my situation is relatively unique in that I was running a business, and just recently I realized, man, that's pretty young to be running a business. I started in my early 20s, and I had actually two businesses going. My mother then was diagnosed with breast cancer shortly after my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. And we had a number of years dealing with both of them, illness, treatments, etc. So I'm running a business. I have a little one at home. And I was lucky because my husband at the time was able to do a lot of the home stuff. But I was being pulled in a lot of directions. So my mother lived an hour in one direction, and my dad was 3 hours the opposite direction. And because they had divorced when I was young. So here my sister and I wanted to be running a business, wanting to do all this other stuff. And now we're torn with how much time can we spend with our parents separately, and who's going to do what, who's going to manage the business, and so on. And that was the biggest challenge because, of course, we wanted to spend as much time we can with them. And again, like most people whose parents are diagnosed, we don't acknowledge the fact that they might not be with us much longer. It's go for treatment. Yes, they're going to be fine. Looking on the bright side. We hadn't talked about death growing up. Like this was never a conversation any of us had. So we weren't thinking on the death terms. We were thinking on treatment and living forever to ripe old age, which did not happen. And when I turned 28, my mother passed. And 8 months later, my father passed. And so those two deaths were extremely hard. But then we also experienced my brother-in-law passed away unexpectedly, and my grandfather. So within 3 years, we had 4 deaths. And it was sort of a joke that, oh man, I could plan funerals and I could do this in my sleep because it was one after the other.
Right.
But what I did do, though, is I sold the business. My sister was already out of it. I sold the business and went into finance. And so I I grieved, but I didn't grieve the way people would today because there's a lot more options available to them. For me, how I was dealing with things was head down, run the business, do what needed to be done, manage staff, that kind of thing. And just one step in front of the other. Just whatever each day presented itself, just do what needed to be done.
Yeah.
And there was never any time for myself. So I ended up being sick. And that was sort of around the time where I said, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I had another child. I had a baby. I was running the business, had a baby. I had to go right back to work a week later. Like I took a week off. So I'm in the business and I thought, what am I doing here? Like this is not okay. And so yeah, that's when I sold the business and I decided I'm just going to stay home for a couple of years with the little one. And I was approached to come into the financial industry. And that's when I studied to become a stockbroker. And again, still not really dealing with my parents' deaths. It is what it is. We don't talk about that kind of thing. And I started reading a lot more. My mother was a born again Christian, so she had faith when she died. And so there was a lot of her stuff that I could read to find some comfort, that kind of thing. But it was more just ignore it and it'll go away. And it didn't. I was getting sicker and sicker and needed to sort of face it, but I wasn't making the connection to the fact that I had been dealing with all that grief, but just bottling it up inside. And that's when I started, I wouldn't say studying, but reading a lot more on spirituality, psychology, health, nutrition, like all of that combined. And yet I was also studying, I had done the securities and went into that. So a lot of reading on finance, and that really kept me busy. And but it was more the reading. I decided, okay, I have to learn how to deal with this psychology and what was actually happening at the time and what I was ignoring and learning to deal with this, um, the situation, and not just the death and grieving, but the situation of running businesses and being a mom and wife and everything else that the community. I was involved with the community quite a bit, and then dealing with the trauma of losing both parents and not having that support and that unconditional love from anyone anymore, them being gone. So,
Yeah.
that was, yeah, a lot, especially when I think back in my 20s. That's a lot.
Yeah. When you look back on it now, you wonder how you made it through and raising kids at the same time.
Right. And that was the joy, like you look at the kids and that was the fun and the life, as opposed to, the opposite of the death. And, yeah, so from that, sort of learning, I realized a couple of things that most of my friends hadn't gone through this. I just assumed this was normal, because,
Right.
as I started to, go through life and having conversations, it became clear that a lot of people haven't lost their parents or a loved one, and they haven't planned these kind of funerals and gone through a lot of this or lost a spouse and so on. So there was a lot, again, to uncover that it's like, okay, this isn't sort of a normal thing. This is something that really needed to be addressed and looked at and uncovered kind of thing. And
Did you ever have a friend that said, listen, what you've gone through is traumatic
oh,
and
heck no.
you need to take a minute?
No.
So all of this was sort of self-discovery and self-realization. Oof.
Absolutely. Yep. No, I was on so many committees and chair of a lot of committees for my kids, 'cause my kids are 8 years apart. So I had, a lot of stuff with my daughter's school, and then I have this baby. So I'm trying to do mom and daughter kind of things. And I'm also, well, I better get to the gym and get back in shape and, that kind of thing, taking the baby with me. And you just do all of that stuff. And through all of that, absolutely nobody else in the family, nobody else that I was on committees with, no one said, hey, you might want to take a beat.
Yeah.
At all. It's like, okay, we've got another meeting and we got the parents meetings for this and da da da. It's like, I was very involved with stuff, and that just kept on coming.
Well, and from the outside, you look like you were busy and thriving and
Right.
apparently happy because you're busy and you look like you're thriving. But of course, what we know about grief is a lot of it is hidden, and we continue to go about our busyness and our jobs and our work, even while we may not be coping well with grief.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so your work now focuses on holistic services. You look at overall well-being, emotional, physical, and financial health, because financial health is your main focus, but you realize it's way more than that. What made you want to expand beyond estate and financial guidance?
Okay, well, this is another interesting area because, as I mentioned, I went into the financial industry, and again, it took me a while. I don't know if I'm maybe just a slow learner, but I'm in this position where I'm doing financial planning and working with my clients on the financial side, and my perspective and my conversations were quite different than anyone else in the other offices and in the industry, when we went to conferences and stuff, because my focus was not put your money away, save for your retirement, save for, the future. It was all about future. And mine wasn't. Mine was, what are you doing today? Like, how many vacations do you want to do every year? What are you doing to spend time with your parents? What are you doing to spend time with your family? And we have to save for retirement, but that's not my focus. I need to make sure that you're doing things today and embracing this moment. So my conversations and my financial plans were a little different. It's like, okay, well, put money away for tomorrow, but we have to put money away for this year, like, because we don't know how many more years we have. And to me, I just, felt that my perspective was that was even more important than saving for retirement. Neither of my parents lived to retirement age. Mom was only 50 and dad was 57. So if they had only saved for retirement, they never would have enjoyed or embraced any of that. So my focus, and still is, what makes you happy today? Like, what can you do today that helps you thrive, and embracing your family and so on. So the financial industry is very lucrative. Like, you can make bank, lots of money. That's where, a good financial future was for me, and I thrived. But my interests were on health and psychology, that kind of thing. So that is when I got a diploma in acupuncture. I got my orthomolecular nutrition diploma. I was very interested in health, nutrition, fitness, that type of thing. And I became a positive psychology practitioner and got my certification as a mindfulness meditation teacher. That was my passion. That was my interest. And my role in the financial world in the last, I guess, 20 years was no longer a stockbroker. I wasn't dealing with actual advisors or clients. I was dealing with advisors. So I was trying to teach them more of the psychology and where their clients are coming from, because I knew that connection. So when I was doing presentations to large groups or in board meetings, and with at a board table with all these financial advisors and lawyers, again, my viewpoint and perspective was different than most that are focusing on just the numbers. I could do the graphs and the numbers and the EBITDAs and all the jargon. But that wasn't where I was coming from. Mine was more the compassion for your client that's coming in your office and connecting with them to find out what's going on in their life and in their situation that would now be the driver behind where they need to be putting their money. Are they looking after a parent, or are they looking after a spouse? Those are the key issues. And if you're not even asking those questions, then how do you know that their focus is on retirement or just their kids' education? So it was by those meetings that I was having and explaining what a role is on an executor, and meeting with executors and seeing that emotional impact when their parents are passing, or their, any family member, and they're having to deal with this. It's an emotional one. It's not a financial one. Like, those are connected. They blend together. You can't separate them. They're not silos. And then also on the physical side, as opposed to the emotional side, I was a very physically active person. I was doing triathlons competitively. I was in international, went down to Australia for Worlds and so on. For my age group, I didn't start this when I was young. This was more of a coping mechanism after my parents' death, and then more deaths to come, which we haven't addressed yet, but there were more deaths. So it's like, as my release for my emotional stress, I used my physical being, and I started running and cycling and doing triathlons. And I could see a big difference as well through the physical aspect of, okay, that was my release for helping myself go through the different losses that we were still facing, and helping and being able to, if I'm looking after myself physically, I can be here for others to help them through what they were going through as well. So to me, it was always, I kept seeing these three areas as interconnected. And I also got certified as a life coach, executive coach. And when everything is broken down into all these little minutia parts of whether it's relationships or different physical and health or whatever, every little part, no matter where you look at it, is not just one emotion, or it's not just in physical or just finances. They're correlated. So, and if someone loses their job, for example, that's going to not just affect their finances because they're not having an income. It's going to affect them emotionally because of their worthiness, etc. But it's also affecting physically. So they don't have to go to their job. They're physically in an environment where now they're not working, etc. So you can take any subject and it's going to cross those three areas. And taking a look at those three, to me, was very important. It was like, I wanted to call it like the trilogy of well-being. You need those three, but it's also, when I'm working with people, I see it's also our 3-ring circus. So you've got a 3-ring circus of something's out of whack. You're trying to balance these things, and if one's out of whack, they're all out of whack. So how can we get them somewhat aligned to give us this sense of well-being? So that's sort of how it came to pass. Even though I was working in finances, I was studying all these other areas and absorbed in, the meditation, the mindfulness, spirituality, if you will. Mm-hmm.
I would think this is pretty unusual for somebody who works in a financial area.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I would lay a ton of money on the fact that it would be very hard for you to find somebody else who's got this background, that has the studies on emotional and physical and finance, and especially with over 30 years experience in finance. It just doesn't typically happen. But
and I mean, it all overlaps. I get it.
It does.
100%. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about caregiving and family relationships, you absolutely have to draw in finances. So in end-of-life care, we have a social worker. And that's one of the things they start talking about. Do you have enough money to meet your needs? Where do you need additional resources? How can we refer those? What do you qualify? What do you qualify for? How can we help with that? So, holistic financial planning. I don't know that I've ever heard that term used, but that's really what you're doing. I think that's pretty remarkable. After the break, Tracy's going to share some tips on choosing an appointment partner. So keep listening.
This episode is being sponsored by Halo Care. Caring for a loved one at home can be both rewarding and overwhelming. At Halo Care, we're here to help you find the balance, combining technology and heartfelt support so aging at home feels safer, easier, and more connected. Our 24/7 Care Hub team is always just a call away, keeping families informed and seniors supported around the clock. From personal care and home safety to meaningful social connection, Halo Care gives you peace of mind knowing someone's always there. Whether you're supporting an aging parent or planning for your own independence, Halo Care empowers you to live confidently at home, surrounded by care that's compassionate, human, and truly personalized. Learn more at halocaregroup.com/USA or check the show notes for the link. Halo Care, where technology meets compassion and home feels like home. This episode is sponsored by Hospice Navigation Services.
If you or someone you care about is dealing with a life-limiting illness, you need a guide. Hospice Navigation Services is here to help you get the best end-of-life care possible. We understand the importance of personalized, experienced support. Hospice navigators provide one-on-one support over the phone or through video calls to guide you every step of the way. They'll answer your questions, explain what hospice care looks like, and give you the tools to feel confident in your decisions. Whether you're planning ahead or you have an urgent need, Hospice Navigation Services helps you and your family understand your options for end-of-life care. A hospice navigation session is a great way to troubleshoot your current hospice care and get answers to your questions. You don't have to go through this alone. You deserve compassionate support and guidance for your end-of-life experience. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. To book your hospice navigation session and receive your free guide to end-of-life care, visit our website at hospicenavigation.com. It's your journey. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. Okay, so you lost your parents and you made a lot of life changes, and whether you were aware of what you were doing, you were managing your grief and you began to take care of your physical body. I think that, that speaks well for your self-awareness. But what other losses did you have? You mentioned your brother-in-law who died fairly young at 47.
Yeah, he was my brother was 47. My brother-in-law was only 40. So that was when my grandparents, my brother-in-law and the my both parents. But then fast forward, and then I had another brother-in-law on my my husband's side. The siblings have ALS. So genetic type, we did not know this. So the eldest brother passed. I think he was 50. And then the youngest brother passed with ALS. And then we had the third sibling in 2020, who I was very close with. She and I were often, people thought we were sisters because we were always together. We ran together and so on. And when she got diagnosed in May of 2020, she only lasted months. She passed in October. So it was a very fast ALS. Because usually you have 2 to 5 years on average. So we knew it was coming. So she passed. And then shortly after, my brother was diagnosed, and he passed at 47. He got cancer. And his was also quick. His was only months to live. So during all of that, that was really when I got what I can only describe as a calling to write the book. I was driving in my car, and I was driving my vehicle one day, and I was thinking of how, like we were just talking about, how do you get someone who's got a financial job, a career in finance, investments, talking about this stuff with executors. At the time, I'm also a certified executive advisor. So that's my focus, is the death and dying part of finance. Right. But I've got all of this information. I've got all this skill. I've got the emotional and the physical training as well. And now I've got 2 more deaths. Again, my brother hadn't passed when I got this idea, this calling. And I'm going, what am I supposed to do with this? It wasn't a poor me. Why is this happening to me? Not at all. I didn't have that feeling, but it's like, why have I gone through all of this? I've experienced so many family members with so many different avenues of dying, different experiences. Why is this happening again? And I got this feeling, it's like, you have to write a book. Yeah. And I was, no, I am not that person. I was still doing triathlon. It's like, no. I had just ruptured my Achilles, which is interesting enough. I was just healing from that, which I think was a reason to, okay, you need to sit this one out. You need to be sitting.
To get off your feet.
Yes. And I'm like, no. I got to get back to running. I'm an athlete. Well, I was trying to be at my age, and it's like, I want to be out. I do not want to sit at a desk and be doing this. So my sister had written a book. So my idea was, I get home, call her and say, hey, here's a great idea for a book. I've got all this information, And she goes,
but
no.
You write it. You wanted her to write it.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And she's like, no, 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 no. No, this is your calling. So I'm like, oh, no. So I've never been one of those people who have always died to write a book. It's like, oh, I can't wait. I'd love to be an author, and never, 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 never. From a teenager, I was told I'm not good at English. You're not good at writing. That was your sister's area of expertise, that kind of thing, right? So it's like, okay, I guess I'm not good anyway. And off I go on my own thing. So anyway, so that's where this all came from, is like I need to combine all of this knowledge because, like you said, you don't hear of people in the financial industry doing all of this. They may call themselves a holistic because that means they're going to do RSPs and education and work with divorce and so on, but it's not, they don't have the background or training per se in the health and nutrition or all that stuff.
right.
So that's really where I just decided, it's like, yeah, I got to do this. And it was begrudgingly, I have to do this. And I almost felt like it was a task. It's like, you gotta do this. And it really felt like an obligation. I felt obligated to share my knowledge with others.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I have no interest in being, you know, well known or wealthy. You don't get wealthy off books. It's not I didn't want to be famous. That's not my goal. It was, I just really need to get this information into other people's hands.
Yeah.
Because if I had it in my 20s, if someone had given it to me, I would have read it.
Yeah. You wrote the book you needed. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what I wrote it with myself in mind as a kid, in my 20s. I thought, what could I have used?
Yeah.
But for any age, like it was shocking to me when I was going through, I don't know, my sixth death and person dying and the heartache and loss of that, and having friends who'd never, ever experienced one loss, let alone the number that I had.
Yeah. You can be in your 50s, 60s and not had a loss yet.
Yeah. And that's really what I found. And once I turned 50, my mother's age, my perspective really, really changed. Then it became, holy smoke, I'm older than my mom would have made. Like this year now is a year that she never got. And the next year was a year she never got. And then 57 was dad's age. And so once I was at that age, I'm like, I really have to do something with my life that, enjoy it, experience it. And that was my perspective. It's just, yeah, I have to get out there and now I have to get this book done and write. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I had to just, okay, we got to figure this out. But there were other little things, little breadcrumbs that had happened leading up to this as well. And it's like, okay, this is a sign I need to be sitting down and doing it. And my sister was instrumental in that. She said, okay, we're going to go for a weekend. We're going to take off. And we went up north, and I brought all my little sticky notes and my white paper to stick on the walls. And I had all the different subjects and all the little topics. And that's how and we'd have breakfast, and then she'd leave for the day and come back later. And she goes, okay, sit down and start writing. I'll be back in a few hours. So I love it. Yeah. So I was sort of sequestered in the hotel, and yeah, it was lovely. It was great. It was a really smart idea to get away from my, my normal home and, environment where you'd, it's like, well, I'll just go do the dishes, or I'll just go do something else.
Oh, yeah.
And,
so I can put it off. So,
Yeah.
So what you came up with, your book is Before Goodbye, Your Emotional, Physical, and Financial Guide When a Loved One is Diagnosed with a Serious Illness. And I think that's so important because it speaks to the holistic part. You're looking at all the different aspects of caregiving and what it's like to experience in your family having a person in your family with a serious illness, because financial impact on caregivers is huge. It's one of the biggest reasons for bankruptcy in the United States is healthcare issues, healthcare bills. So I read through the book, skimmed through the book, and one of the things that I noticed, you talk about something that I sort of want to highlight for anybody who is listening who might be in a caregiving situation. You talk about an appointment partner. What is an appointment partner? Who should be an appointment partner, and what do they do? What are their responsibilities?
Okay. So I approach an appointment partner similar to, like, especially choosing one, similar to how someone might want to choose their power of attorney. So their, alternative decision maker, or whether it's for personal care, finance, and so on. You sort of approach it the same way, but it's not necessarily the same person. And I'll explain why. An appointment partner is simply someone that's going to come with you to whatever appointment is. And you want to choose that on based on a couple of specific things. Number one is your trust level. It has to be somebody that you trust for a multitude of different ways or reasons. So you can have a conversation before the appointment and let them know what your fears and your questions are so they can write them down. Because when the person who's been diagnosed with something serious, they're in that survival mode, which I talk quite a bit about, and they're not going to be able to think straight. So when the doctor, medical professional is giving them information, whether it's information on treatment, information on their diagnosis, outcomes, etc., they're going to be extremely, extremely stressed. So having an extra person in the room with them, they can be taking those notes and they can ask those questions that you've now forgotten. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, I had 20 questions. I can't remember one until you get home. So making sure it's the person that you can trust. And the reason behind it is they can now be asking you questions. They can be taking notes when those answers are given as well. Because again, they're not going to be able to take in that information, the diagnosed person, right? The loved one is going to be, I can't remember, or whatever they're being told. So writing all of that down, so you have that information to either, in many cases, most cases, I would say, after when the family comes together and they say, okay, what did the doctor tell you? They can not have misinformation. So quite often we distort what we hear. It's like, oh, he said I'm going to be fine. They said I'm going to whatever, I'll do 2 treatments, I'm going to be great.
Right.
That's not what the medical professional said.
But that's all you could hold. That's all you
Right.
could absorb at the time. Yeah.
Exactly. And so before and after the whatever meeting was, it medical, financial even, then having a conversation with the appointment partner, it's like, okay, quite often it's we need to disseminate this to the family. So that's either through a group chat, and I talk about technology using it that way, or a family meeting where you come together and say, okay, this is what's happened. Oftentimes it's going to be things like they can't be left alone while they're on their treatment because side effects, etc. So now they have to have other decisions made as a family. So it's spreading that information. And sometimes there are bits of information that the family members want to know, but the loved one does not want shared. So it has to be someone that you trust to say, look, I know they said XYZ. I do not want my family to know this information. So it's somebody that's why the trust comes up. And the person that goes with you to a medical appointment may be somebody different than a financial appointment, because they may want to take someone that's very finance savvy to that appointment instead of, someone that's just emotionally sound. So it's, when you're choosing an executor or power of attorney, you have to ask yourself the questions. If I'm choosing this person to do this for me, number one, do they think the same way as I do? Like whether they're pro treatment, anti-treatment, that type of thing. They're going to abide by my wishes. I can trust that they're going to listen to what I have to say. So that's key. It doesn't have to be a family member. It can be a friend. I have been an appointment partner for friends, so I've gone with them. And oftentimes they can be more objective. You're not living in it. It's not affecting you day to day. I go home. I'm not living with them. I'm not family. So sometimes that can actually even be better because, again, they don't have that emotional attachment so tightly. Just having a friend or more distant family member. So when choosing these people, is do it from a practical standpoint as well. So you're not going to have an appointment partner. It's like, oh, I want you to come to all my appointments, and they live hours away. That's putting a huge burden on that other person to be able to come to meet you and then, go to those appointments and so on. They may want to, and they may offer, and you could take them up on it, and that's different. But the same goes with when you're choosing a power of attorney for personal care. If once you're in the hospital and you need someone there all the time, to have somebody that has to fly in is going to be a challenge. So it has to be very practical based in that when you're choosing. So that's basically the role, is to be your ears, to be your mouth for you, to be asking those questions, to be taking in that information, and then disseminating it amongst the family members as the loved one sees fit as well is key.
I love this role because it requires you to think very intentionally, very purposefully about who would fit in, because you're asking a lot. And I know that there are a lot of people that their caregiving village is very small, right? People choose to solo age, or family relationships restrict how many people you can have access to. But if you have an appointment partner, you've got somebody reliable, somebody who can communicate, somebody you trust to be discreet, hopefully somebody who's well-versed in whatever appointment you're going to, whether it's financial or whether it's healthcare. You're not looking at a decision maker, somebody who's as emotionally invested as a family member might be. So it's a good idea to think outside your immediate family. I kind of like that. And now also, it sort of spreads the responsibilities around. So if you've got a caregiver who's doing most of your stuff with you, your say one of your kids, one of your adult children, then for you to have a friend who's an appointment partner eases the caregiving burden for your kid. Yeah, I really like that idea. Out of everything in the book, I noticed that, because I think that's a great piece of very practical advice. So you have a wonderful reminder in the book for caregivers. You say, give of yourself, don't give up yourself. Give of yourself, don't give up yourself. What does that mean to you?
Okay. So that really resonates and was very key for me to put in the book because of what I went through with my parents. I basically gave up myself for the business, for my community work I was doing, for my parents. Everybody else got a piece of me except me.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up being sick afterwards, because I gave everything, including myself. And that's really where I need to dial back. And so a lot of the training that I did, whether it was psychology or mindfulness, that kind of thing, it really focuses on being present and healthy yourself. And it's the old, we've all heard, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Put on your oxygen mask first.
Yeah.
So those are the givens of, it's like, yeah. But we've heard it so many times, we just ignore it. Like, it's like, yeah. Sure. People don't even listen to that on a plane now. It's like they're up there talking about put your oxygen mask on. We're just like, yeah, we know it.
Nobody's listening. Yeah.
But when it's put this way, it's like, I'm not telling people to not give. It's like, yeah, give of yourself. Like, give your time and give what you can, but don't give it all so you have nothing left.
Right. It's a season. And it is definitely a long haul for most caregivers. Definitely a long haul.
Especially when we get into the dementia and Alzheimer's. Like, before goodbye in this instance it's not just the goodbye of death. It's the goodbye of them knowing who you are and the dreams that you had together and the plans that you had. It's, so let's do this stuff before that happens and make sure this is all balanced.
Yeah. So a lot of people we know these days are not providing care for someone who is considered a loved one, right? In fact, I know in the end-of-life industry, we're getting away from using that term because so many caregivers are providing care for someone they don't like, someone they were estranged from, someone who they just don't have a great relationship with. What advice would you offer to those caregivers when that emotional attachment is different?
Yeah. Okay. I think this was one of the hardest questions to be asked. And what I would do is I would ask them to reframe it in calling themselves a caregiver and see them as a care provider. Because only in the, like, I know we use that term when you're hiring somebody to come in.
Right.
But if they can frame it themselves as a care provider, then they can actually be focused on, what am I actually doing for this person that I really don't like very much, but it's my responsibility to do X, Y, and Z. They can actually, I think even probably do a better job of separating of give of themselves versus give up themselves. So they can pinpoint what is their role in helping this person. And okay, I am going to provide and list what are they providing. I am providing company at these hours. I'm providing home care. They've got me coming and cleaning or feeding or whatever it is. And so they can define these are my roles as a care provider. And it actually by framing it that way, they can give themselves some grace or more grace in that I don't have to be this loving connected that everybody like as a caregiver,
Right.
quote unquote, it's this loving, caring, giving, etc. There's that connotation, but if you say care provider, then you can actually step back and go, okay, this is what I'm providing. You do it with grace and kindness and compassion. I'm not saying you just go in there and, throw things around and it's gruff, but it actually will help the person that is the care provider, that is seeing as I'm giving this person care, but it's like I'm now providing this care.
It's a little more distance, a little more objective.
Objective and empowering.
Yeah.
When you've got someone that's been estranged, again, this will go into the psychology of it though, but when someone has been estranged, they don't get along, they don't like this person, they may be doing whatever it is begrudgingly. They are doing it. Sure. They're not happy about it. They feel like they have to do this. So their demeanor is going to be different in that instance. But when you give them permission to say you're a care provider or that they are a care provider, they can see that it's the service they're giving. They don't have to go above and beyond that expectation. They can actually have those boundaries of this is what I'm providing. They can feel good about themselves providing this, but then they're giving themselves the permission to not have to give more than what they really need to and what they've signed up for.
Well, and I think we don't talk about it a whole lot when we talk about caregiving and caregivers, but boundaries are great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do talk about that in the book as well. I do cover boundaries, and boundaries are healthy. Like we need to have those as caregivers and loving family members, and not having the guilt that goes with it. But, again, there's a list of, I did mention it in the emotional part, there's a list of all these emotions of, things that you may feel at one time or another. And guilt is huge. And when we say no to something, it's like, oh, we carry that guilt with us that maybe I should have said yes or what have you. But having that boundary is allowed, and you don't have to feel guilty, especially if you can set out your boundaries and verbalize them and make them known. Don't just have them inside and say, I just won't do that, but don't tell anybody. It's like, I will do X, Y, Z, but I will not do A, B, C.
Right. And it's okay to have that boundary with friends, with work, with yourself, and with your person that you're taking care of. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Tracy, before we close, I want to make sure listeners know where to find your book and connect with you, but I want to ask you one last question. What is your best self-care habit now when it comes to grief?
Okay. Yeah, one of the things is mine changes. But for me, it's being physical. I need to be out walking, running, on my bike. It depends on the weather. But I have to be physical. It took me a long time to figure that out. I went through a long span where I was doing a lot of meditation, and that's great. But my fastest way to ground myself and bring myself back to center is by doing something physical. And it can be something as easy as a 10-minute workout with weights, if it's raining out and so on. So it's going to be different for every person, but that's what I find. Other people, it's reading. It's like, oh, I want to paint, I want to read, and that's great. But for me, I have to move my body, and it's the type of body that I have. I know the energy in my body, and it's not being busy. It's being aware and being physical. And for a bit, I would put weights in my kitchen. So I'd have some weights, and I could do squats and just, dumbbells and that kind of thing in the spur of the moment, so that I didn't have to leave the room when my sister-in-law was staying with me while they were renovating their house. They came and stayed with me for a couple weeks, and I had to, shift my house, make sure there was room for them and so on. And I didn't want to spend the time going for a run. I didn't want to leave the house. I wanted to be with her and spend as much time as I could. And that afforded me that stress relief I can just do a quick workout and then, spend the rest of the time with her.
Yeah. Movement is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tracy, how can listeners find the book Before Goodbye, and how can they connect with you?
Okay, so my website is the easiest way to connect, and I do have links to where to find the book. If most of your listeners are in the States, it's through Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It is available international, so if you do have family members anywhere in the world, you can buy it on Amazon as well. So, and in Canada, it's Indigo. Most stores, libraries can access it. So if you've got a library near you, just ask them to bring it in as well.
Perfect. And what's your website?
It's tracymheath.com.
Okay. So the book is Before Goodbye, Your Emotional, Physical, and Financial Guide When a Loved One is Diagnosed with a Serious Illness. Tracy, thank you for sharing your perspective and the wisdom that you've learned. You've had so many opportunities that were put in front of you, and you've created so much meaning from it. Thank you for sharing all of it today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast. Check out our sponsor in the show notes, and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.